Hello there, I am Scott Telek, author of The Swithin, the Arthurian book series, completely faithful to the medieval Arthurian sources. And we're continuing our guided reading of Sir Thomas Malory's Morte d'Arthur, and we're still in the middle of a gigantic battle, so let's get right to it. When Sir Arthur and King Ban and Bors beheld them and all their knights, they praised them much for their noble cheer of chivalry, for the hardiest fighters that ever they heard or saw. With that there dressed them of 40 noble knights, and said unto the three kings they would break their battle. These were their names: Lionses, Pharians, Ulfius, Brastius, Ector, Kay, Lucan the butler, Griflet la Fils de Deux, Maurice de la Roche, Guinas de Blois, Bryant of the Forest Savage, Belias, Morions of the Castle of Maidens, Flanidaris of the Castle of Ladies, Anisantians, that was King Bors' godson, a noble knight, Ladinas de la Ruse, Emerals Carlus, Gracians le Caslin, one Blois de la Case, and Sir Culegrance de Gore. All these knights rode on with spears on their thighs, and spurred their horses mightily as the horses might run. And the 11 kings with part of their knights rushed in their horses as fast as they might of their spears, and there they did on both parties marvelous deeds of arms. So came into the thick of the press Arthur, Ban, and Bors, and slew down right on both hands, that their horses went in blood up to the fetlocks. But the 11 kings and their host was ever in the visage of Arthur. Wherefore Ban and Bors had great marvel, considering the great slaughter that there was, but at last they were driven aback over a little river. With that came Merlin on a great black horse, and said unto Arthur, Thou hast never done? Hast thou not done enough? Of 70,000 this day hast you left alive but 15,000, and it is time to say, Ho! For God is wroth with you that you will never have done. For yonder 11 kings at this time will not be overthrown. But if you tarry on them any longer, your fortune will turn, and they shall increase. And therefore withdraw unto your lodging, and rest you as soon as you may, and reward your good knights with gold and silver, for they have well deserved it. There may be no riches too dear for them, for so few men as you have, there were never men did more of prowess than they have done today. For you have matched this day the best fighters in the world. That is truth, said King Ban and Bors. Also, said Merlin, withdraw now where you list, for this 3 year I dare undertake they shall not test you, and by then you shall hear new tidings. And then Merlin said unto Arthur, These 11 kings have more on hand than they are aware of, for the Saracens are landed in their countries more than 40,000, that burn and slay, and have laid siege at the castle Wandesborough, and make great destruction. Therefore dread you not this 3 year. Also, sir, all the goods that be gotten at this battle, let them be searched, and when you have them in your hands, let them be given freely unto these 2 kings, Ban and Bors, that they may reward their knights withal, and that shall cause strangers to be of better will to do you service at need. Also, you be able to reward your own knights of your own goods whensoever it liketh you. It is well said, quoth Arthur, and as thou hast devised, so shall it be done. Okay, so Merlin comes up and tells Arthur to end the battle because he's done all he can do, and if he keeps going, the tide will turn and he'll start to lose. But I'm curious about one thing he says, that God is angry with Arthur. Wrath means angry, and plenty of times when you're reading Morte d'Arthur, you'll encounter the phrase wonderly wroth, which means incredibly angry. But I just think that's kind of a funny thing to say to Arthur. God is angry with him that he didn't end the battle when he should have. There's another incident coming up in which Merlin also says that God is angry with Arthur. Now we are to believe that Arthur is the choice of God to be king at that time. The whole thing with the sword and the stone is to show that God himself chose Arthur to be king, and now God is angry with him. As I write my books, I find that Merlin says a lot of pretty nasty things and lays a lot of serious mind games on the kings he works with, and this is one of them. God is angry with you. To me, that's pretty serious. He also tells Arthur to give his knights and the knights of Ban and Bors gold and silver to reward them, because, you know, Merlin is all about always rewarding the people with riches in order to secure their loyalty. He also predicts that Arthur will have no further trouble with the rebel kings for 3 years, since they'll be all off fighting the Saxons in their lands. The Saxons are called Saracens here, although Saracens are mostly considered to be Muslims, and Saxons are from Germanic countries. But you remember from the section I told you before Arthur arrives on the scene that Vortigern allowed the Saxons into the country, and they've been trying to come in and settle ever since. So when the text says Saracens, it means people who are coming into the country and looking to settle there. When it was delivered to Ban and Bors, they gave the goods as freely to their knights as freely as it was given to them. Then Merlin took his leave of Arthur and the 2 kings to go and see his master Blaise that dwelled in Northumberland, and so he departed and came to his master that was passing glad of his coming. And there he told how Arthur and the 2 kings had sped at the great battle, and how it was ended, and told the names of every king and knight of worship that was there. And so Blaise wrote the battle word by word as Merlin told him how it began, and by whom, and in likewise how it was ended, and who had the worse. All the battles that were done in Arthur's days Merlin did his master Blaise to write. Also he did write down all the battles that every worthy knight did of Arthur's court. Now Merlin goes to Northumberland to see Blaise, whom they describe as his master. I don't think Blaise has been mentioned previously in Le Morte d'Arthur, but he is a kind of big deal in the Vulgate. Blaise is the friend of Merlin's mother and was a big character in the story of Merlin's birth. It was Blaise's idea to have Merlin baptized in order to cleanse him of the devil's influence. And after that, Merlin told Blaise to go to Northumberland, where he began writing a book chronicling everything that happens here. And in the Vulgate, we're often told that the whole reason we still know this story today is because of Blaise's book. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that in the Vulgate, Merlin tells everybody that there are times when he cannot be around people. And I think at a certain point it even says that he would hurt people if he stayed around them. So during those times, he goes to stay with Blaise in Northumberland. Alright, let's go on. After this, Merlin departed from his master and came to King Arthur that was in the castle of Bedegraine, that was one of the castles that stood in the forest of Sherwood. And Merlin was so disguised that King Arthur knew him not, for he was all befurred in black sheepskin, and a great pair of boots and bows and arrows in a russet gown, and brought wild geese in his hand. It was on the morn after Candlemas Day, but King Arthur knew him not. Sir, said Merlin unto the king, will you give me a gift? Wherefore, said Sir Arthur, should I give ye a gift, churl? Sir, said Merlin, you were better to give me a gift that is not in your hand than to lose great riches, for here in the same place where the great battle was is great treasure hid in the earth. Who told you so, churl? Said Arthur. Merlin told me so, said he. Then Ulfius and Brastias knew him well enough and smiled. Sire, said these 2 knights, it is Merlin that so speaketh unto you. Then King Arthur was greatly abashed, and had marvel of Merlin, and so had King Ban and King Bors, and so they had great disport at him. Okay, so this is something that's odd and doesn't necessarily come off here. It's much longer in the Vulgate's telling, and even then it took me several times through it to figure out what it's about. But first let's talk about Merlin's abilities. Merlin knows everything that happened in the past and future, and he's able to shape-shift. So when the text says that Merlin comes in disguise, it doesn't mean he's dressed up. It means he actually looks like a different person. And this will start happening more very soon. So in the longer telling, Merlin looks like a hunter who has 2 birds. Arthur offers to buy the birds, but the birds catcher chides him that the price is too low. He says King Arthur has the ability to make a rich man out of a poor one, since he has immense wealth at his disposal, but he's just being cheap. So the scene really is about Merlin chiding Arthur for not being more generous. There's also mention of buried treasure, but that ultimately goes nowhere. And speaking of things that go nowhere, let's have our next paragraph. So in the meanwhile there came a damsel that was an earl's daughter. His name was Sanam, and her name was Leonors, a passing fair damsel, and she came thither for to do homage as other lords did after the great battle. And King Arthur set his love greatly upon her, and so did she upon him. And the king had ado with her, and gat on her a child. His name was Bor, that was after a good knight, and of the Table Round. So yes, you heard that right. It says that King Arthur had a son named Bor. Only this person, this son of King Arthur, is never ever mentioned or heard of again. I told you the whole thing's pretty loose on cohesion. Then came word that King Rience of northern Wales made great war on King Leodegrance of Camelard, for the which Arthur was wroth, for he loved him well and hated King Rience, for he was always against him. So by ordinance of the 3 kings that were sent home unto Benwick, all they would depart for dread of King Claudas and Phariance and Antimes and Gracian and Lioness of Parian, with the leaders of those that should keep the king's lands. This is just saying that they heard that King Rience was attacking King Leodegrance, and so they all go to help him. We'll hear a lot more about King Rience and King Leodegrance in the future, so let's all just move into the next section.